mentioned, today I'll be sharing for your introduction to H2 China Studies in Chinese, which is also called CSC. So this is my outline for today. So I understand that most of you won't exactly know what H2 CSC encompasses. So I'll be going through the syllabus, the exam format, some A rates, and then maybe I'll give my personal view on CSC, which is what's good about CSC, what's bad about CSC, what's some advice that maybe you can take, and some potential unique courses that you might want to consider. And lastly, I'll just take questions at the end of the presentation. So first for CSC, it is really content heavy. So the content is split into 4 major parts: economics, politics, social, and foreign policy. They are split evenly, and each different content part will have about 10 subtopics. So in total, CSC has about 40 subtopics, and I cannot stress this enough, but it is really content heavy. There's a lot to learn because you're learning about the whole of China. CSC is learning about the whole of China, its rise and its implications. So going a bit more in depth, so I'll just go through what content topics are there and what are the sub-content topics you'll be looking at. So first, for economics, you'll be looking at how China grows its economy, exports, imports, investments, so on and so forth. What are the challenges to its economic rise, such as the environment, and also what are some changes what the Geiger is making to Inkie, which is urbanization and green growth. This was the first big topic. The second big topic will be politics. You'll be learning about the Chinese politic model, and then some challenges it's facing politically, and then what is it working towards. So all these dotted are small topics and subtopics. The third big topic is society. So first off, we're learning about this population, how its population is changing in terms of its structure, in terms of its numbers, in terms of an aging society, and how does this impact China? You'll of course be learning about more of urbanization, how this impact Chinese society and other social policies that the Chinese government implements in the society. The last big topic is called foreign policy. So to this end, you'll be learning about how China does diplomatic ties with other countries, what are some important factors in the Chinese foreign policy, and so you'll be looking at specific case studies of China-US and China-Japan relations. So that is all for the syllabus. So as you can see from my introduction to the syllabus is really quite comprehensive. It's quite broad. There's a lot of content to learn. If not, just move on to the exam format. For the exam format of CSC is like most humanities. So first you have a case study, then you have an essay, and maybe this is slightly different from other subjects, but you have a research paper. So I understand that most of you will not know what a research paper is or what a H2 research paper will entail. So let me just bring you through it briefly. So a research paper is okay. You start at the beginning of J2, you have a mentor, you are expected to hand your work somewhere around the June holidays or a bit later. So the flow of the research paper is as such: you first choose a topic, you do this prelim research. So this prelim research is basically why this topic has value, why are you researching it, what are the current researchers on it. So this is 750 words, and you submit to MOE for approval. So of course, most will be approved by the first try, and after it's approved, you start on your actual research paper. So actual research paper is 3 to 4K characters in Chinese. And of course, it must be relevant to the topic to study. And it's quite helpful if you study something that you do research on something that you're studying, because it helps with the exam as well. So for research paper itself, what I would say is that you are expected to review a multitude of academic sources, and then you argue your stand based on these sources and also based on your own views. So for me, and I think for most people, when you write a CSC research paper, it really takes up a lot of your time. So for example, from January to June, I think half of my weekends was spent in the library just researching on this and doing the research paper. So yeah, this is definitely something you should consider. And of course, you're not doing this alone. You have a mentor, and you'll be given up to 3 opportunities to seek formal feedback from a mentor. This means that you will have your research paper completed, you sit down with her, and then she'll go through and tell you what should be improved, what should be edited, what should be moved here or there. So this is taking into account that some of you will be your first time research paper, and this is really a hands-on guide. If not moving away from research paper, I also like to share some sample essay questions that could come out in terms of China studies. So, for example, essay questions could be like 区域发展不平衡是中国经济发展所面临的最大的挑战. So, for example, for these questions, you'll be writing about is inequality in development the biggest challenge of Chinese economic rise, or are there other challenges? Which one is the most challenging? So, like for example, I'll just give a sample response to this question. What examiners or what your teachers will be looking for is first you argue, why does inequality in development affect China's rise? Then you'll be arguing, for example, 2 or 3 other challenges that the Chinese economy faces. For example, you want to argue the aging population, and maybe you argue trade wars or holistic relations with other foreign nations. And then at the end of it, you do an evaluation, you compare each factor with another factor, and you come out to your own conclusion of which is the most important challenge of Chinese economic rise. So this is just a sample, very quick answer to these essay questions. As you can see, I gave 3 other questions, and all these questions encompass each of these broad topics. The first question is from economics. The second question is from politics. The third question is from social, and the last question is from foreign policy. So if not moving away from syllabus, I'll touch on the A rate. So at this point, I just want to give a very fast caveat that this A rate is an estimation, and it differs very, very strongly from school to school. So for example, the largest CSE population is in Hwa-Chong, and Hwa-Chong's A rate is actually way higher than 40%, it is 60%. But for the other schools that take CSE, I think the other bigger schools such as Inoya, RV or Dunman, their A rate is about 40%. Then you have the smaller schools that's not part of the 4 schools I mentioned above. They do offer CSE, but they have a very, very small cohort, and most of the time their A rate is very low. So do take this into consideration when you choose, if you want to choose CSE at your various schools, because each school will offer a different program. So for this, right, for example, I come from Hwa-Chong, so I'll just give my Hwa-Chong experience. You'll spend about 6 hours per week on CSE lessons. You have 3 lectures, and then you have 1 maths lecture. Sorry, 3 tutors, 3 small classroom lessons, and then you have 1 big lecture which involves the whole cohort. And that will be it for every single week of your school year. So if I just give my personal take on CSE, what's good and what's bad about CSE. So first off the bat, the most important point to me is that CSE is more than just a normal subject. It is a program. So this program is called the Bicultural Studies program, and everyone that takes the program takes CSE. So first off, right, this program actually starts in secondary 3. So I think there's some of you in the audience that have taken CSE since secondary 3, and they are bounded by the program to take CSE in H2 level as well. But for those that haven't took CSE before, you also have a chance to join the program in J1. This is also a scholarship, which will open a lot of opportunities up for you. So since the program, CSE offers many seminars and talks exclusive to this community, which are really helpful and enrich and broaden your perspectives. And on top of that, because the program is very holistic, you learn about the whole of China. You don't just learn one part of it. You don't just learn, like, for example, the economics, but you learn everything. You learn economics, political theories, social theories, international relations. You really get a very, very broad grasp of what's actually going on in the real world. The second point is that, so similar to the previous, it is one of the most real-world applicable subjects you can take in JC, because it is not theory-based, it is real-world events-based. So you learn about contemporary China's implications, how its rise will impact the world and impact Singapore. The third point is you can improve your Chinese. So I think that this is a bit underrated, but I think that you should keep in mind that Chinese would definitely be one of the most important languages in the next few years, especially with China's rise. 4, it is a favorite subject for certain scholarships or courses, especially for, I think, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or if you're going to China study. I'll touch on this more later. And the last point is you can take on the Bicultural Studies scholarship and go on 1 month trip to China. So I'll just explain a bit more on this. As I mentioned just now, if you take CSE, you have a choice whether to join this program called the Bicultural Studies program. And this scholarship we call the Bicultural Studies Scholarship. And if you go on a 1 month expense-free trip to China, okay, you pay for the air tickets, but that's honestly very, very cheap when you count the duration there. So I think every school and every year does it slightly differently. But for mine, I went to about 4 locations across 1 month. I did immersions at 2 schools, and I did like a community CIP at Nanjing, which is a rural area in China, and it was honestly one of the best experiences of my life. So I think that very, very few courses actually offer this opportunity for you to go on a 1 month long trip. Most schools will allow you to go overseas, but that is probably for about 1 to 2 weeks. So the CSC is really, really special and unique in this aspect, and it is really, really helpful as well. Okay, enough good things said. I'll just touch on the bad things as well. So, okay, before I start on the bad things, I'd just like to say that personally, from what I've observed during my batch, most people, okay, not most, but quite a lot, there's a number of people really, really hated CSC. They really, really regretted choosing CSC. And I think it just shows that CSC is not a subject, that is for everyone. So first of all, CSC is that its area is abysmal. It is low compared to your other contemporary, like more popular subjects like math, like economics, even like translation. Its area is one of the lowest across all A-level subjects. The second point is that a huge chunk of content and theories. So as I mentioned just now, CSC touches on 4 broad aspects of China, and there's about 40 subtopics. That is really quite crazy. You'll be spending a lot of time trying to even understand this kind of stuff, let alone try to memorize statistics for them. So it'll take out a lot of time. And the third is that CSC is a research paper. So yes, for research paper, will help you to understand research better, to understand China better. It really, really takes up a lot of your time. So as I mentioned now, I spend probably half my weekends cramped up in NLB trying to do my research. And I know a lot of people that spend way more time than me. So these are precious time that can be using to study your actual H2 subjects or your other H2 subjects. So I think you should take this into consideration as well. The research paper is not easy as it seems. The fourth point is that your fingers will cramp during exams. So I want to elaborate on this a bit more. CSC being a content-heavy subject, you also write a crazy amount. So I'll just use the essay as an example. The essay is 2 hours, 15 minutes. You'll be doing 3 questions. So typically for each question, what's expected of you, you'll be writing about 4 to 5 sides of a foolscap paper. That's about 1,000 characters. So to put things into perspective, you're writing 3,000 Chinese characters during a 2 hours exam. And it's really, really painful. The last point is in Chinese. So all the lessons taught, all the theories taught, all the exams, research paper, they're all in Chinese language. They're not in English. So what this means is that, if you're not fluent in Chinese, you can't really speak Chinese, then I will strongly discourage you from studying this subject, because you don't have to be good in Chinese, but you have to know your Chinese at the very least. If not, I'll just offer some advice for prospective CSC students. First, if you're going to take CSC, take the scholarship, because even if you don't take a scholarship, you're still going to do the exact same thing, but without the overseas trip. So to me, the scholarship is a very big bonus. You don't do anything extra on top of it. Second, you should take CSC only if you have a real interest in China or the syllabus. If not, it'll be your worst nightmare. So I'm saying this because CSC is very content heavy. You'll be spending a lot of time trying to read it, trying to understand your notes. But if you have a real interest, I think that a lot of the things that you already know beforehand will help you a lot in CSC. So for example, for me, I had an interest in politics, in international relations. So I did read books about them. And these external theories are also very helpful when you talk about CSC, because it is a real world application. And the last advice I have to give is just understand concepts instead of memorizing. With 40 subtopics, the number of stats that you can memorize is really, really crazy. I won't even recommend that you try. But to me, there's some broad concepts, social concepts, economic theories that you can understand and can use this across the whole of the CSC syllabus. And I highly recommend that you understand this first before delving into any statistics to memorize. If not for my last point, I'll just be giving some potential uni paths. So of course, a disclaimer first, studying CSC does not confine you to any specific path. It's just one of your 3 or 4 H2 subjects. it's and at a broad scale of things, it's just an H2 subject. It's not a university course. So many of my batchmates end up going to courses that is not related to CSE. But for those of you that's looking at what CSE helps you to get, so right off the bat is for university courses, it is humans related courses. Things such as IR, such as pol science, such as FASS, these are the places that you'll find much easier to get in with CSE. And the underlying reason of this is because at least in Singapore H2 syllabus, you don't have syllabus teaching like politics. You don't have syllabus teaching like foreign policy. So CSE is very unique in its kind. It teaches a lot of things that no other courses teaches. There's no substitute to CSE. And therefore, this really stands out when you write in and you say that you have prior experience in this. The second type of courses is mother tongue courses. So this one is quite naturally because you study Chinese at H2 level and you'll be better placed to go on a Chinese course in university. If not for scholarships, I'll just list two. So first is any person that's looking to go to China for studies. So if you go Beijing, Tsinghua, Fudan, etc., if you study CSE, there's a much higher chance that the government will offer you a scholarship. There's a much higher chance that the Chinese government will offer you a scholarship. And in fact, most of my friends that go China to study, they are under scholarship by China, which is completely bond free and you don't pay anything. So it's really quite worth it. And the last scholarship I'll touch on is just MFA, Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So this ministry in particular is looking for people to go to China, and therefore they're also happy to offer you MFA scholarships if you choose to go to China. So this is something that CSE really helps in. Okay, I'm seeing the first question, which is there H3 for CSE? Short answer is no. CSE is only taught at H2 level. If you want to learn CSE at H1 level, there's an alternative course called China Studies in English. So that is offered only at H1 level. So there's no H3 for CSE. For the second question, which is for the research paper, how would students collect survey results? So I'll just clarify here that I think most research papers, or in fact all research papers, they will not ask you to collect survey results, because what they really expect students to do at H2 CSE level is to have a very academic research paper. In other words, you'll be looking at verified academic sources, looking at scholars' work instead of looking for survey results, which is I think something you do at a secondary 4 CSE level. The third question, which is what's the difference between CSE and CSE? To be very honest, I'm not very sure because I did not take the second subject. But two things I know for sure. First, CSE is in English, CSE is in Chinese. So I think that's one major difference. The second difference is H1 and H2. So H2 means that you spend twice as much time studying the subject versus a H1 subject. And there is the big lecture on top of it. So for the fourth question, can I take CSE without taking the bicultural studies program? Answer is yes, you can. But I advise against it because there's no drawback from taking the bicultural study program now. You go on a scholarship, you just go overseas. I think it's all gains and no loss. But yes, you can take it without taking BSP. The fifth question regarding next lecture, I'm not sure. I left school quite a while ago. I graduated in 19, so I haven't experienced school for a while, so I cannot answer that. Okay, the sixth question, does CSE give me an advantage if I want to study overseas, not China, or only a slight advantage? So I think this really depends on what kind of context you're asking it in. So if you're asking in terms of scholarship-wise, any scholarship so CSE does not provide a marked advantage when you talk about just giving general overseas scholarships. For example, if you want to go UK or US and you apply for example, PSC scholarship, there's not a lot of advantage that CSE will give you, except for China. And I think it also really depends on the courses. So for example, if you're going to take engineering overseas, then there's no way CSE is going to help you because it's not related. But if you're going to take something like more human related, such as IR, which is a popular choice, then maybe CSE will give you an advantage because it is one of the only subjects in Singapore which you can learn something related to this now. So it really depends on the context. Are you looking at scholarship or looking at courses? Okay, I think I didn't answer this just now. But for the third question, what is the difference between CSC and CSE? So I'll try to give an explanation, but I cannot say that this is perfect because I did not take the second subject. And I think the second subject is, which is Chinese studies in English, is even more rare than Chinese studies in Chinese. So I can think of two major differences. First is one is in Chinese and one is in English, teaching methods, examinations, so on and so forth. So that is really quite different. The second difference is maybe H1 and H2. CSE is only offered at H1 level. This means that you only spend half the time, you only have to spend half the time learning this subject. So there's a difference in intensity as well. For the seventh question, are there any useful online sources you turned in to help you in this subject? So for me, I do a lot of external readings. This is not just for CSE because I like it a lot. So I read on political books, I read on foreign policy book, on current affairs books, and I do find that these books help me in CSE a lot. I understand some online sources. I know that a lot of my friends will look at Chinese news like Feng Huang Wang, so that you have a grasp on what's really happening in China and you have the useful terms that come along with it. If not, yeah, but looking for just like online notes, I don't think there are any. And I would personally say that CSE is a subject that is also based quite strongly on your understanding of concepts. So even if you have notes, if you don't understand concepts, it doesn't really work as well. Can you see in CSE lectures and listen without taking CSE? I don't know, but I think it really depends on which school you're from and whether your teacher allows it. If not, but truth to be told, I would say that you're already too busy in your JC. If you're taking, no matter what subject you're taking, you'll probably be quite busy and you will have time to see it for a 1.5 hour lecture every week to listen to CSE. But you could, depending on your teacher. Okay, the ninth question is the research paper individual. Answer is yes. You do it alone. Everyone will do a research paper, but you'll be guided by a mentor. So for example, from my school, Hwa Chong, during my year, I think each mentor guided about 10 students, some even more, around 15 students. So yes, it's mostly individual, but you have the help of your mentor. Why did I decide to take CSE? So for me, I didn't really have a choice because I took the bicultural studies scholarship in secondary 3. I was actually bonded to take CSE J1 and J2. Foreign policy and also politics, which is something that I knew that only CSE offers and no other H2 subject offer. So I was quite happy to take it. And I think the second more important point was that it gives you overseas opportunities. Yes, that was actually the main reason why I took CSE. And I think the main reason why a lot of people took CSE because of the overseas trip. Okay, for my grade for CSE, I got A in A levels. Yes. CSE lesson, typically for normal classroom lessons, what we'll do at the beginning, you'll be going through content subjects. So one lesson will be one subtopic. And then towards the end, when we learn all the topics already, we'll mostly be going through essays. The teachers will give us theoretical questions in class, and then we will go through the questions together. Then for math lectures, it's normally essay writing tips or research paper tips, etc. But I would like to caveat that I think every school does it slightly differently. I'm not really sure what CSE lesson look like in other schools. I can only speak for Hwa Chong, where I come from. Okay, what was my most memorable experience in learning CSE? To be honest, I would say that the highlight is the China trip by far. And I'm quite sure that will be the answer for most other people learning CSE as well. So we go to China, we go to a lot of different locations. We go together like, as friends, as young people without any burden. It really feels very, very fun. You have a lot of free time in China. You can do whatever you want. It's really quite a fun experience. For the new question, why did I choose to take CSE? So I think it's quite similar to the question above. yes, I took it first because I have an interest in politics and foreign affairs. So that's the first reason. Second reason is because of overseas trip. Yes, I think especially because you take CSC in secondary three onwards, you actually go overseas every single. So I went overseas 3 times instead of just once. Career plans. So first off, since it's a CSC related thing, I'll just say that studying CSC does not confine you to any single career. But for me, I just finished my NS, so I'm going to study law in NUS most probably, starting next year. Yes. So as you can see, it's not very related to CSC as a whole.